Sup world, sup Zion, it's Prince Easy coming at you again once more as usual. I do have a couple slides that I want to share with you in this fine day that we're having. And of course, before we get to those slides, I want to issue a copyright disclaimer for the copywritten material that's going to be shared in this here post, right? So yeah, I think at this point I should name my videos a mixed bag or something. Right? Because I do have a tendency to bring in a plethora of, right? And I think this whole experience is just a deep dive into my mind. Yeah? So, yeah, get a piece of it. Yeah, this is disheartening. Picking shit with your hand? Nah, that's some diabolical shit. Burkina Faso added to a global watch list of restricting civic freedoms. This is from the BBC. Burkina Faso has been added to the international watch list category of civic freedom and freedoms are deteriorating. Right group Civicus says the move, right? This one group, right? This rights group called Civicus, right, says the move reflects what it describes as an escalating crackdown on political opposition, civil society organizations, and government critics. Okay, these are the accusations from Civicus, right? Also, Civicus, which monitors civic freedoms in 198 countries and territories, has kept Burkina Faso in its repressed category, the second most restrictive rating on its scale. Okay, emphasis on its scale. So like they have this rights group organization has the right to have a scale and has the right to put people in these scales, specifically these so-called 198 countries or so, right? The country joins Bahrain, Ecuador, Georgia, India, and the organization latest watch list, right? So they have this whole watch list stuff. In February 2026, Burkina Faso authorities suspended the United Nations Human Rights Office shortly after UN High Commissioner for Human, you can read that, right? The Civicus report also comes as Burkina Faso, alongside Mali and Niger, prepares to leave the international, right? So they're making a connection, right? So look at this, there's a trend here, right? So they then kicked out the United Nations representative, right, without stating why, right? And now they're leaving the ICC. Like these are early signs of repression, you know. Human rights groups warn the move could further weaken accountability for alleged abuse by state forces and armed groups across the three countries and the wider Sahel region, right? So they care about the abuse, right, of state forces and stuff, right? They don't care about what the terrorists are doing. No, Civicus, right? It's most like Civica them, you know what I mean? Wow, right? So I ran into this whole I don't even want to call it, right, situation, right? And I've been talking about this a long time ago, and I asked, right, these people say, well, these people are destroying our culture and da 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 d, right? So they went ahead and made this chart here that was floating around the internet, right? Aspects and assumptions of whiteness and white culture in the United States, right? So they don't even go into describing what white culture is, right? But as long as you're white, you're cultured, okay? If you know what I mean. Look at me being poetic and stuff. Okay, let's have a closer look. White dominant culture or whiteness refers to a way white people and their traditions, attitudes, and way of life have been normalized over time and now considered standard practice in the United States. And since white people still hold most institutional power in America, right? That's very good for you to admit, right? We have all internalized some aspects of white culture, including people of color. That is also very accurate. Rugged individualism, aka capitalism, right? The individualism, and the individual is the primary unit. Self-reliance, independence, and autonomy, highly valued and rewarded. I don't think. Okay. Okay, it's gonna be one of those videos, right, where we're gonna laugh a lot. Okay. Okay. Individuals assumed to be in control of their environment, right? You get what you deserve, right? So rugged individualism. The other aspect, family structure. The nuclear family, father, mother, 2.3 children, is ideal social unit, right? So they're like giving specific statistics and stuff, right? Husband is the breadwinner and head of the household. Wife is the homemaker and subordinate to the husband. So this is terrific. Children should have their own rooms, be independent. Okay. Emphasis on scientific methods. Objective, rational, linear thinking. Okay, linear thinking, rational and objective, right? Cause and effect relationships. Great. Quantitative emphasis. Okay, that's another aspect of white culture. And the other aspect number 4 at this particular point, right? Remember, we have covered rugged individualism, family structure, emphasis on scientific method. Now we move on to history, right? Based on Northern European immigrants' experience in the United States, heavy focus on British Empire, the primacy of Western, Greek/Roman, and Judeo-Christian tradition. That is how they would summarize their history pertaining to white culture, right? Again, I do have a lot. I think we should cycle back to this at one point in time, but I do have another video lined up. After this, I'll tell you about it. Protestant work ethic. Okay? Hard work is the key to success. Work before play. If you didn't meet your goals, you didn't work hard enough. Religion. Christianity is the norm. Anything other than Judeo-Christian tradition is foreign. No tolerance for deviation from single God concept. Okay? So I don't know why you're opposed to... Okay, let's proceed. Status, power, and authority. That's another aspect. Wealth equals worth. Your job is who you are. Respect authority. Heavy value on ownership of goods, space, and property. Okay, emphasis on that individualism, right? Future orientation, right? Plan for future. Delayed gratification. Progress is always best. Tomorrow will be better. Time. Follow rigid time schedules. Time reviewed as a commodity. But talk about time, you know, I remember, I think I linked the video. There's this Kenyan girl. He was talking about how Africa sees time. And it was quite insightful. Let's just say that. Aesthetics, right? Based on European culture. Steak and potatoes. Bland is best. Okay? Woman's beauty based on blonde, thin, on quotation, Barbie. Man's attractiveness based on economic status, power, intellect. Holidays based on Christian religion, based on white history and male leaders. Justice based on English common law, protect property and entitlements. Intent counts. Okay, intent counts. Competition. Be number one. Win at all costs. Winner, loser, dichotomy. Action orientation. Master and control nature. Must always do something about a situation. Aggressiveness and extroversion. Decision making. Majority rule when whites have power. Communication. The King's English. Rules. White written tradition. Avoid conflict. Intimacy. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay. Don't show emotion. Don't discuss personal life. Be polite. Those brothers and sisters, they said this came from the so-called Smithsonian whatever. Right? So yeah, that's what I wanted to share with you. Like I said, it's a mixed bag. I don't know. 113 aerial refueling tankers across the Middle East so far. 72. Right? And of course, right, I think an important emphasis has to be made. They didn't reach Europe. Ceuta or Ceuta is a part of Africa that Spain still colonizes. Look at this. There's even more. Well, if your eyes are open, these people cannot be sneaky anymore. Right? This movie is about Michael. It's about Archangel Michael. But they sell it as a struggle movie or something, right? And people try to relate to it and stuff. But nah. This is not a new concept, of course, right? I'm having a sick child, and this sick child has this specific disease. I think you have heard, you have seen such movies, right? This specific disease forces me to get into some situationships, basically meeting the grants of the elites for some purpose they have. Yeah, this is dark, and I've been watching these things for a really long time, because it is like every movie they do it, this witchcraft, right? And that's what the next video is gonna be about, right? My response to their conspiracy, right? Because not my friends nor my enemies want to tell me anything. So what I'm going to respond to what my enemies have said, right? Yeah, they're back at it, brothers and sisters, and they're going to use your favorite streamers, right? A joke, but they're going to target the so-called sub-Saharan Africa. There's an admixture, apparently. This is from Hamas. Apparently, there's still even. I've almost forgotten about the phases. The first phase took a long time. Now I don't know what the mediators are doing about it, but we're gonna see. Well, you know what? We're gonna circle back to this a couple slides down. This is also what is happening, apparently, supposedly. Well, I think people should learn how to lie more, especially if you are a Secretary of War, you know. People's opinion on the Iranian war, on the sieges since Trump came into power, I don't think you would see increase in mobilization. Nah, this is just you trying to guilty trip people, calling them unpatriotic if they don't join your war campaign. So, Imhotep was second to the Pharaoh, only second to the Pharaoh. That's how high he rose into the rank. And there are similarities between this character Imhotep and Joseph. I think they made it up. And this Josa character here is who was turned into Joseph, just to confuse the masses. Because the retelling of Imhotep was, he was born in Egypt, not taken there after being sold by his brothers and stuff. It's sketchy, let's just say that, but we can definitely point out, right, that Imhotep was definitely Joseph, right? The characteristics, they match weirdly. So again, me and my craziness, you know. That's why you're here, right? To experience the craziness. So I have a list here. And this list pause the video, look at it. There's a reason I use the word choke points, because all of these countries here listed are strategically located in very important waterways. No. While I was thinking about the peculiar patterns, I flash back and I say to myself, what made these colonial powers, right, have the ability to go far and wide and do whatever they had to do? Ships. Right now we have made tremendous progress when it comes to logistics, right? Moving goods and people from one place to another. Yes, indeed. but ships have still remained pivotal when it comes to the world economy. And something very, very funny, in my opinion, this is just my observation, right? I didn't get this nowhere or anywhere, right? This is just my opinion upon my observation. Okay, now in this list that you're seeing in front of you, yeah, there are stars, right? I've placed stars before some locations, as you can see in the list over there. And these locations over the past few years have been problematic, and this is a telltale sign that this is very intentional, right? And I told you that even then, back then, right? Do not think that this is chaos, right? That things are just erupting randomly, right? I have respect for these people because they are planners, brothers and sisters, okay? They plan, right? Regardless of what they're planning is good or bad, they are planning and they are committed to doing it. I mean, seriously, look at this, right? Oman, Yemen, all of these locations, especially South Africa now, South Africa, right? Because I was thinking to myself, what would make South Africa be the target at this point? I don't think it was just a petty comeback for the court rulings and stuff. We have had those moments, right, back then. And we were here to cover, and I didn't think that it was one of them, but I don't think it was satisfactory enough, in my opinion. And now that time has gone on, and I let that thing fester in my mind. Now I see it now. South Africa has become important. Okay? So, South Africa, Spain, Morocco, another point. Baltic Sea, Panama, another. Everywhere that I've put stars here, they have had a war in the right? Panama, Argentina, right? We know what they're doing in Argentina, right? They're doing the whole Eastern European program, right? And I'm interested to know where these fires are happening in Europe, right? Venezuela, right? Gulf of Mexico, which was later turned into the Gulf of you know what, right? Canada, Greenland, another, right? Tunisia, Italy, I've not put a star to that. Why? Because that's coming. That's a future conflict. Believe me, you brothers and sisters, okay? In this aspect here, I am sure all of these places, they're going to erupt, okay? Tunisia, Italy, crucial, right? Especially when they are creating these vortices which can be economically beneficial, right? Because they are vortices that help shipping, save running costs, right? So I didn't spare any, right? Anywhere they can get a boost to go further, right? Slingshot type situation, like the so-called space people go, right? Saudi Arabia, Sudan, we are gonna see that, okay? We are seeing that, right? The one aspect of that, right? But Saudi Arabia is also gonna have this thing with Sudan. Okay, as if Sudan has not had enough, right? Eritrea is also gonna be involved, right? They are not a player as of now. Maybe this is just coming from limited information I have, right? But these places might also be erupting and I don't even know yet, right? Iran, UAE, Kuwait, Iraq, another important. These members here, they're in conflict because of the water, right? India, Sri Lanka, India, right? that whole situation is gonna have I miswrote that whole situation, right? So let me do that. Okay, Sri Lanka, India, yeah, that's cooking, right? East and South China Sea, that's, I've put a star on that, right? I don't think we need to even explain that, right? East Sea, right? Sea of Japan, so called, that's also cooking, right? Coral Sea, Papua New Guinea is also gonna be involved, right? The Amazon, right? Cuba, Miami, all of these points, right? Kaliningrad, right? Amsterdam, London, Paris. If they're not occupied, then they're soon gonna be, right? Black Sea, right? Kazakhstan, Tehran, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Turkmenistan, or that's how they call it, maybe, perhaps. I hope you're catching my drift here, brothers and sisters. I put it down there. Let me show you this. I can do you one better, right? I have a whole map here, okay? So, currently, Somalia and Yemen, Somaliland and Yemen, they're having a problem, right? That is the first choke point. And then we have Saudi Arabia, of course, right? That's why I'm just suspecting by their timetable. I think they're gonna, yes, okay. In Sudan, there's gonna be a problem, right? And Egypt also, right? Why? Because of the Suez Canal, right? So moving up to the UAE out here, Bandar Abbas, right? Iran and Oman, right? We don't even need to even explain that situation, right? And whatever is happening in Kazakhstan, right? People are not even paying attention out there, right? There's some spooky stuff happening over there, right? And Iran is gonna have a problem from that side, okay? And all of these tiny waterways in here, they're gonna be influential next, right? So moving on, okay, Sri Lanka and India over here, talking about that choke point, right? That choke point there provides a boost, okay? Provides a boost for shipping headed outside, okay? And also gives access to places like Bangladesh and everywhere, right? That's why we're having issues on Bangladesh. I was wondering why. I think now we know, right? Myanmar, we have also seen stuff. Right? This is funny, brothers and sisters. To me, this is peculiar, to say the least, right? We have been thinking that all of these situations are somehow unrelated, right? Let's proceed, right? Of course, we cannot forget about Medan, Kuala Lumpur, all of this, the so-called South China Sea and access to it, right? The Malaysian, right? We are going to have a problem. I guarantee you, we're going to have a problem. The trend tracks, right? The trend tracks. We are seeing Taiwan, okay, right? Coming up here to the so-called Sea of Japan. Tensions are high and they're gonna erupt. They have to, because why? Somebody wants to rule over those waters over there, okay? Now moving up, right? Let's talk about that disaster over there, right? Italy, Tunisia, right? Tripoli, right? The most recent that we have had, right? Spain and Morocco. Look at that. Right? We are also going to have a problem over here. That's why I mentioned those three countries, right? Random, Belgium, and Amsterdam. Important, right? The Baltic Sea, right? We don't even need to say anything about it. Okay, so yeah, right? Cape Town. That's where these so-called separatists want to take part of South Africa. And funny enough, it's gonna be also a good point for them to create new infrastructure for their next phase of colonization. Now they're just taking over, That's why we're going to have problems in Madagascar. That's why we're going to have problems in Mozambique. It's important. Okay, they cannot leave Tanzania or Zanzibar for that matter. The Seychelles, yes, they're going to catch smoke. They would make great temporary storage places, won't they? Right? They have entire bases. Okay? Mombasa, Mogadishu, yeah. It's gonna get hectic. I'm not doing this to fear monger or none. Again, just like an AI, right? You always recognize patterns. Patterns tell you what they could possibly be wanting to do, or what exactly they want, the outcome. By the things and habits and decisions they make, you can back engineer, right, from their execution. You don't even need to be with them in their meetings and stuff, right, in where they kill goats and dance naked and stuff, right? You don't need to be there. You just need to look at their execution, and you can predict. And by the execution, by the tendency, I mean, look at those stars happening there. By the execution, by my simulation, they're trying to take over. Now, for what reason, that is yet to be seen. But as far as we see, there's another phenomenon that I've written down there, right? The Panama and the Amazon, they're having issues with water levels. So I don't know, maybe it might be to have political leverage over these areas, right, to basically own them, right, or it's basically to destroy the current economic status of the world entirely, to just bring down the whole thing. Because these moves they're not. What nation would want this? I mean, seriously. So Cuba, I'm without a doubt they are gonna invade Cuba. Just like Venezuela. Why? Because it is situated somewhere very, very crucial to a power that would want to rule the world. Because these are not moves of a person that is looking for the so-called I want to have my own Western sphere of influence in the so-called Americas. Right? Some of you have been theorizing such a thing, right? Saying that perhaps they will come into an agreement that they pull out and just focus on the Americas and let the Europeans deal with European issues. And no. These moves here, these are world Napoleonic moves here, brothers and sisters, right? Ports, right? They have taken down airports. It's quite easy, actually, right? They have been monopolizing the aviation industry, right? We have talked about the monopolies that exist in the West that have dominated, right? Boeing, Airbus, right? And what is the other? I think there are two or one. I don't know. I've forgotten, right? But those are the two producers of the aircraft, right? If they stop producing, then the whole flight industry goes to a halt, right? Because what is left then, right? They will need to start cannibalizing planes for spare parts. So that is easy, right? But to disrupt shipping, to take over shipping, that's something right there. And this is the person that thought of this is definitely out of their minds. Then I am suspecting is leverage. For what? I have my own assumptions. But That is the first subject that I would like to end with. The second subject, I have this feeling in my gut. I always trust my gut. I have this feeling on my gut that they're dismantling Russia indirectly. And what I would suggest Russia to do, to take their publicly admitted top 10 earners of their country, and if they find out that 6 of them are under attack in one way or the other, economically, information warfare, kinetic, take heed. Because these two moves here, they might seem random, right? For instance, the oil was obvious, right? Russia supplies a big portion of the world energy. That was clear and obvious to everyone. That's why it was so confusing and perplexing. Why would they do this to themselves, right? Hence, turning back to the first thing above, I think they're doing it to destroy. As long as these regions remain hot kinetically, the waterways will be closed. Why? Because they learned from Iran that it is one way to secure themselves. That's why I'm saying this. The one that thought of this is crazy. Okay, now these recent 2 attacks, right? One at the club, another at the beach. Tourism. And from my last information I have, tourism has been growing exponentially over there. So you tell me, are they dismantling your economy using bombs? Like I said, just take 10 of them. If 6 of them check out, then you know what's up. And I'm sure there's no new war. There are ways to deal. I wanted this video to be short and sweet, but unfortunately that's not possible. Right, we are at 37:44 right now, right? So I'm gonna put a pin on it right there. Just a couple thoughts that you can mull over. Right, so the next video is gonna be mainly about the elites. It's gonna be mostly partially your business and partially not your business. You'll understand when I make it. So anyway, I'm gonna put a pin on it right there. Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.